Hey, y'all. As a growing family, my husband and I love game night, especially when it's Wayfair edition.
Let's do it. You gotta name as many Wayfair furniture and decor categories as you can. Ready? Go.
Sofas, bar stools, beds, ottomans, outdoor seating, bookshelves, kitchen tables, garden sheds, mid-century modern lamps.
Time. Nice. You got 9 out of a lot. Not too bad. Keep practicing by visiting Wayfair.com, where you can shop every style for every home.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Hey, all CHP listeners all over the galaxy. Laszlo Montgomery here. Last week, I braved the drive downtown to meet with Jesse Appell. He's 1,000 times more famous than your humble narrator, so no need for an intro. I read his new book, and we enjoyed a nice 30-year-old white tea and discussed some stories taken from the book. The conversation is unedited and contains 1 hour of raw conversation. 97.6% of Jesse speaking and 2.4% of me. Therefore, you're in for a treat. There's only one F-bomb in there, and it wasn't uttered by me. Don't be alarmed that there's only been 6 episodes released since last summer. Actually, I have never been more productive. Patreon and CHP Premium subscribers are begging me not to be so prolific with all the hours and hours of new shows that they're getting to try on first. This has been the best stuff that's ever come out of the CHP, in my utterly worthless opinion. Details are in the show notes accompanying this interview with Jesse, and I've also included links where you can check out Jesse's book, This Was Funnier in China, along with links to Jesse's tea house, where many CHP listeners get all their tea and tea accoutrement. The book is This Was Funnier in China. I hope you enjoy the program.
How is everybody doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome to a very special live stream. We have here Laszlo Montgomery of the China History Podcast fame. You want to give a little quick introduction? Who are you?
Laszlo Montgomery, the China History Podcast fame.
And so we're basically going to do a little bit of a different live stream than normal. We're going to be drinking tea and talking about my book. We have the book. We have the book. This Was Funnier in China, which is coming out in February. This is all about my time living in China as a Chinese comedian, learning about Xiangsheng, traditional Chinese comedy, stand-up comedy. And Laszlo's going to interview me here about his experience reading through the book and talking about China and comedy, and we'll all chill together and it'll be a lot of fun. So I have a second copy of the book, which we can stick up somewhere.
Yeah.
For
a prop.
Prop purposes. There we go. And while we're doing this, I figure it's worth breaking out the really good tea, right?
Yeah, 30-year-old Baicha.
Yeah, so we're going to have the really old, 30-plus-year-old white tea. And I'm going to show you this. Take a look at those leaves.
Oh,
Smell
wow.
it. Yeah, very nice. So give you guys a little quick look at what the leaves look like for the 30-plus-year-old aged white tea.
Yeah,
which is
pretty much look like tea leaves.
definitely my special occasion tea. And what more special occasion there could be than talking about Chinese comedy and my new book coming out, and with a very...
Having me drive all the way to this neighborhood.
You came
here.
in all the way from Rancho
Take my
Cucamonga.
life in my hands.
Exactly. So let's get started then. What do you think? Let's. How do you want to do your intro?
Well, I think that let's read the intro right from the book.
Let's
because
do it.
I don't know, there's a couple of my listeners probably never heard of you.
Yep.
Jesse Appell is a comedian whose original comedy works have passed 500 million views on Chinese and international internet sites, earning silver viewership award plaques from both YouTube and Bilibili.
Yep.
He has been featured on the front page of the Boston Globe with Tom Brady and the Pope, and has appeared on a veritable alphabet soup of media: CBS, TEDx, BBC, PBS, and NPR in the West, and CCTV, Beijing TV, Shanghai TV, and China Radio International in Asia. He's also the founder and head tea guy of Jesse's Tea House.
There we go. It's in the book, people. Jesse's
This
Tea
Was
House.
Funnier in China is his first book.
First
but
book.
Probably not your last, I'm thinking.
I hope so. I was reading.
There's so much money to be made.
So much
in
that
the
book money.
book,
Yeah.
business.
I wish. Yeah. It was funny. I was reading the audiobook for this. I spent 3 days in a studio reading the whole book out loud for the audiobook. And while I was doing it, I was having so much fun. I was like, I got to write another book just so I can do another audiobook. It was super fun. But I'm hopeful. I mean, I always thought maybe one day I would be a writer. If I never gone to China, I think I would have tried to be a writer or some sort of maybe a screenwriter.
Are. You wrote this book,
now
I guess.
I'm a real writer. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
there we go.
there's probably more money in tea and comedy than in writing.
Which is saying something. When tea and Chinese comedy is the safe choice, then that says something. But yeah, so I guess what do you think of the book, and where was the most interesting stuff for discussion?
I read it before Christmas. I don't know if I can remember. No, it was very memorable. There were some great stories. It was sort of just a nice little narrative. I should have listened to the audiobook. Reading it in your voice did make it funnier, but there were some great moments in there. And
here you go. Try some of the white tea. Smelling the white tea.
Wow, I can't wait.
Very
it's so special to have tea with you.
There we go.
You're like a tea guy and everything.
It's good to have tea with you guys as well. If anybody is listening on my podcast or watching on my stream and don't know Laszlo, the China History Podcast is one of the best China history podcasts out there. It's like really fun to listen to, very well researched.
There's only about 3 or 4 of them out there, so being one of the best doesn't really...
Yeah, and you also did a long series on the history of Chinese tea. Which is worth looking up, and that's called the China Tea History?
Well, I actually spun it off and put it on a separate feed called the Tea History Podcast, but all the episodes are available also in the... China History Podcast feed.
Excellent.
There somewhere.
Well, so I highly recommend you guys check that out as well.
That's how we met.
That's how we met, and and I had been listening to the podcast long before we actually met, and a lot of the real China heads listen to this podcast, so it's a really great one.
Except the ones I meet.
Yeah. But so you read the book, and for those of you who are joining on the live stream, we're talking about my new book. This is Funnier in China. And it's coming out in February. It's about all my stories of my life that I lived out in China as a professional comedian, studying traditional Chinese comedy. And where's the place you'd like to start?
Well, why don't we start sort of at the beginning, but you sort of start the book on the path that took you there. And let me just ask you a sort of a general question, and boy, you could probably talk for an hour, but what do you enjoy most about this cross-cultural journey you've been on since that Fulbright scholarship all those years back? That's sort of what got it started for you. You applied for a Fulbright and it got you to China?
Yeah, so basically the start of the story is, by the way, what do you think of the white tea?
Wow. This is good.
This is only basically the opening steep. It gets really rich and herbal. Good white tea.
你继续讲.
Yeah,我继续讲. So basically I applied for the Fulbright grant, which is the academic exchange between America and China. So American scholars go to China to research, Chinese scholars go to America to research. The program was canceled by executive order in Trump's first term, but I believe it is only hibernating. It will be back. I have great faith.
In his second term?
Maybe not in his second term. He'll be back eventually. We lobbied to try to get it back on for years and years. We haven't succeeded. But
you got to get a more expensive lobbyist.
Yeah, exactly. The money was not enough. Maybe that was the problem. But
it always is.
But anyway, that was how I got started in the Chinese comedy. Was I had studied abroad there. I really liked living in China, and I felt like comedy was such this amazing lens to be able to understand everything. Because if you're a comedian, you kind of have to know a little bit about everything. Like this is actually one of the reasons I liked the job. Is like,
but did you perform comedy before?
Yeah. So comedy was my hobby back in America. So starting in high school, I did 4 years of improv in high school.
And were you in Boston or Boston area?
Newton, Massachusetts.
Newton.
So
I've been there.
Suburbs. You've been to Newton?
Yeah.
It's Newton. So it's funny, in China all these years, people are like, where are you from? I'm like, America. I'm never like Newton. But I went to Newton North High School and loved it, and I did acting and drama and improv comedy. And, sorry about that. I did all of these things in order to, I just had a lot of fun doing it. I met good people. I always found the comedy people were really nice, especially the improv comedy people. People are very chill, very creative, very fast, very witty. It was a place where I could kind of be myself. And when I went to China to study abroad, I was also like, what's the comedy like here? And I started meeting people that were doing bilingual improv comedy and Chinese stand-up. And I was like, this is fun. Like I'm really out in the world, meeting real people, getting in front of real audiences. And then I applied for the Fulbright really as a way to get back to China and do this. And I was as happy as anyone that I actually got the grant and was able to start, what now has been a whole life of doing cross-cultural communication through comedy, now through tea, but even if you follow the tea channel, it's funny, I hope. I put comedy videos on the tea channel. And I feel that also makes sense because tea is also part of life. It's one of those things, it's like, you don't do tea to sit and like be quiet and not discuss things. You sit, you drink tea, and you talk about everything.
Unless you're drinking tea by yourself.
Yeah, but even then, like, it leads to sort of introspection and like thinking about the world, even if you're drinking by yourself. So I have kind of never found the tea and the comedy to be in conflict at all. Like I feel this makes total sense to be doing both. And so this book coming out in English is kind of my first attempt to get a lot of that comedy information out to people about, what life is like in China, period, but like specifically what it's like to be a comedian in China.
Yeah, and Simon & Schuster too.
Yeah,
wow, you're not with one of these like my publisher.
Well, I started writing the book in 2018. And so what happened was the book is all about me apprenticing to Master Ding, who is my Chinese comedy master in China.
And I want to talk more about him.
We'll talk more about him. Master Ding gave me this fan, which is in the back over here, when I apprenticed to him. And after he passed away, I was thinking, I want to write down all the stories about learning with him because I'm going to forget them. And it's right in my head now. And it was kind of a way of processing the grief to go back into these old stories and rethink, like, what was he teaching me? Obviously, I knew at the moment there was some things being taught. But when you look back, you can also say, like, what were the bigger things that were being taught? And after I kind of processed my grief in that way by writing a bunch of these stories, I realized, like, hey, if I put these in chronological order and add an intro and an ending, it kind of is looking like a book. And so in around 2018, by I'd say 4 months after he passed away, I had about 40,000 words written, which is like half of a book. And it was all first draft stuff, and so it was pretty rough, but it was enough that I figured I should try to find a literary agent and try to get it published. And I actually found a literary agent, and she sent it around to everywhere. And the feedback from the publishers in 2018 and 2019 was, the book is not pro-China and it's not anti-China, so it has no market in America. You could be either pro-China or anti-China.
That's it.
But
you're with us or against us.
Yeah, either you're pro or you're against, but there's no room for like comedy
you
and
love
life
or you hate.
and
There's no
reality. And so I was like, I thought that was kind of bullshit. The other thing that they said was they thought it would be interesting as a graphic novel. That was
That's a lot of work.
That was, well, one, it was a lot of work, seeing as I had like this book written and I would basically be having to not use any of it if I did the graphic novel. But but also very interesting, it was very polarizing. Like I put together about 12 pages of the layout of a chapter of how I would do that chapter as a graphic novel. And I sent it to people, and half of my friends were like, dude, the book is good. Like, get it published as a book. And then other people are like, the graphic novel is clearly better because it's got pictures and the book is so visual about so it was actually very interesting how polarizing it was. But either way, nobody was actually lining up to pay me to make a graphic novel anyway. So it kind of sat for years and years and years, and I would go back and occasionally try to push it through. And really it was the tea audience and eventually having enough of an audience that I was able to get an agent here in Hollywood for my general entertainment work, and then the agent here connected me to the agent, UTA's literary division, who helped me put together an actual book proposal and then we sent that out again to publishers, and Avid Reader Press at Simon & Schuster were the people who put in the best bid. And so we were like, we actually got it sold. And so even if we never even sell a single copy, just the fact that we were able to get a book about Chinese comedy published in English for the Western market.
In
and
such a high, respected publishing house. Yeah,
so it's like,
great.
I think it's really cool to see, and it's one of the main reasons again why I feel like I've done justice to Master Ding with the book, or at least I hope so.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be very proud of you. You're a great citizen ambassador.
Give it a try.
In addition to your tea life and your and your comedy, just being a good bridge. You're a good bridge, young man.
Try to bridge.
Yeah,
everybody's tearing down the bridges.
That's what's going to hold everything together during these bumpy times.
It's really kind of scary because it's like you kind of like, when I started getting into Chinese cultural exchange, I was like, surely there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of these cultural bridges. And I think back in the more open times there were. But nowadays it's like every year there's fewer. A lot of the bridges are being destroyed purposefully, which is really disgusting. I always figured like if the bridges died, it would be from like atrophy. But I never thought somebody would like purposely take a hammer to something like the Fulbright program to purposely destroy the exchange. And so I've kind of taken it on. I don't know if activism is the right word, but I kind of feel like keeping the camera running while living abroad, talking about these topics in a way that is like, it's about people, it's about comedy, it's about tea, like is a weird form of protest against this kind of backwash of everything having to do with China being about national security. And I'm like, I just don't buy it. There are real national security problems with China, but it should not be the only thing anyone ever talks about. And it's not relevant to most people's regular everyday lives. Whereas like tea and comedy and all of the stuff that's kind of in the book is maybe more regular life-ish, but yeah. But so what else did you want to know about the book? If we're doing
know about the book,
question?
I read it.
Yeah. Or
let's
so
talk about it. There's just like a few
it.
things that I just wanted to. Anyway. Something, let's talk about Xiangsheng, because, that's really what, I'm not going to say that's what made you, but, that was really what gave you, fame in our little worldwide, China watching, China cultural appreciating world. That's what gave you a name. And so tell me about Xiangsheng. Tell me about the Xianfeng Emperor, and what role he played.
Sure.
And then talk about Master Ding.
I love it.
I first heard about him with Mark Rosewell, of course, Da Shan. And, I know what a cultural treasure he was for China, but you knew him. And from reading the book, you knew him quite well. And take as much time as you need.
So Xiangsheng, which I talk about in the book, is this traditional form of Chinese comedy. So there's a joker and a straight man, and you go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's scripted, but it also leaves room for improv. So we'll have a script. If we were performing, we would have a script, and then you would be where the joker is sitting. I would be where the straight man is sitting, or standing rather. And we would have these bits that we worked on, but if we wanted to interact with the audience and figure out who's in the chat, blah, blah, blah. If we wanted to be interacting with them, we could add that in and then go back to the script. It originated again with the Xianfeng Emperor, the death of the Xianfeng Emperor. At the death of the emperor, they had a mourning period, a grieving period for what turned out to be 2 years, that they forbid any Beijing opera from being performed because they felt it was inappropriate to perform this opera and have everybody having fun right after the emperor has died. So during that period, all of the Beijing opera performers were suddenly out of work. And they basically had to hit the streets and figure out a way to make a living as street performers. And during that time were the invention of what they now call a qi, the the translation is minor art forms. So that would include things like the clapperboards, the kuaiban, and a lot of these sort of art forms emerged as a immediate response to all of the performers losing their jobs overnight. Not that different from COVID.
Yeah.
Like COVID was one of these things where you saw people coming up with like internet game shows that were being played in real time from your living room. Stuff like that. You know, disruption creates a lot of innovation. And so one of the things that came out of this period is one of the clowns from the Beijing Opera, whose name is 穷不怕, or I do not fear poverty, which is that's a stage name. So 穷不怕 was a funny guy. He was a clown in the Beijing Opera, and he realized that he could like hit the streets, tell jokes, and people would give him money. And eventually he got so famous that he was invited to perform for Empress Dowager Cixi in the Forbidden City. In the Summer Palace. And so...
On the boat?
I don't know if he was on the boat, but that would have been... I don't know what room he was in, but whatever room it was in, I can guarantee you it was not a funny room, because I've been to the Summer Palace and there's not a funny room in there. It's very grand, it's very cool, not funny. So this dude performed for Empress Dowager Cixi, and he killed it. And so what this meant was that it was now okay for all levels of society to like this comedy form. The people on the street loved it because it was telling street jokes, and even to the modern day, there's always this gradation of comedy in China with Xiangsheng, where some people think it's a very high art form, and there's poetry and opera and singing, and they'll do comedy stuff about the Three Kingdoms and about like New Year's traditions and about hanging New Year's scrolls, which is very high culture, but also there'll be fart jokes and poop jokes and like, you know, dirty jokes, sex jokes. And so there's kind of both. And one of the reasons why it took off so much is because all levels of society were allowed to like it. And so it got bigger and bigger. It eventually evolved from a street art form, and it went into tea houses. And then the tea house became, even now to the modern day, comedy clubs in China that do traditional comedy are chaguar, they're tea houses. And they look like tea houses, and they serve tea. And somebody was asking what tea we're drinking. We're drinking the 33-year aged white tea that was given to me by my friend Yunqing, because it is very appropriate to drink excellent tea while talking about Xiangsheng.
Wow, the 1990s, man.
So, 1990s, so cheers. Dashan era white tea. Anyway, so this art form kind of came about, and I was as surprised as anyone to find out when I arrived in Beijing as a study abroad student, and you take a cab. The cab drivers are listening to this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
It's like classic. It's like almost like in America, I think of like baseball as the background noise of the country. Like you turn on the radio, you listen to the ball game. It's kind of like that in China, but with the Xiangsheng comedy. So the comedians, the traditional comedy is always on the radio. It's always on TV. And when I got there back before the age of stand-up comedy in China, which is now booming, but before stand-up comedy, like the Xiangsheng comedians were full stop the funniest people in the country. They were all the stars. They would do appearances in comedy movies. Like they were real funny. And in my opinion, as a live stage performer, like those are the funniest people that have to go on stage and make people laugh live. It's like there's nothing harder than that. It's easier to shoot a movie. It's easier to write a script. It's easier to do a podcast even. Hey. No offense, but it's my opinion. And so I thought it was super cool that like this comedy style that's so old and it feels like vaudeville is actually alive, full on alive, actually happening. It's not like something like Beijing Opera, which is in a couple theaters around the country and supported by government grants and stuff like that. And there's a small following, but it really would not exist in the open market. Like Xiangsheng just exists in the open market as a real comedy style, real people watch. And I thought that was like super cool that this thing could exist. And then nobody in the Western world knew anything about it.
Other than Abbott and Costello.
Yeah.
But is there anything in the West that's even
I mean,
resembles it other than that Abbott and Costello shtick?
you know, weirdly enough, I don't know if you ever listened to Car Talk, the radio show.
I used to.
It was these two brothers that talked about cars, and they had that Xiangsheng energy. Like it was like they go back and forth, and it was about the vibe and the.
It wasn't fast paced though.
Yeah, So it's not exactly the same. I mean, vaudeville, Abbott and Costello, that old school stuff is the most similar. But even a lot of like podcasting now, a lot of like good podcasts kind of have two hosts, and they have that back and forth vibe. It doesn't have the tightness of Xiangsheng, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I think there's something very like human about two people having a funny conversation that just like every society has its own version of it in some way, and and if it dies, it doesn't die for long. It comes back in a new form. Yeah. So that's you know, that's kind of the closest we get.
Tell me about. Let's talk about Master Ding Guangquan, and when non-Chinese started. Was it after the 1980s? Did it begin with Master Ding?
Yeah. So late 80s. What happened was that Jiang Kun, a famous Xiangsheng performer, took Da Shan and some other people onto the New Year's Gala. And there was this, so the Chinese New Year's Gala is like the biggest TV show in China. Every year, like 700 million people watch it. It's like bigger than the Super Bowl. And they have song and dance and comedy. And the comedy that year, they had a couple foreigners go up and try to do Chinese comedy, and it blew everyone's mind. Because this was a time when...
Yeah, back then, that was something.
I mean, back then it wasn't like, it's only a couple years removed from a period in Chinese history where every foreigner in the entire country lived on one floor of one hotel near Yong'an, in the Friendship Hotel or whatever they called it. And so like, most Chinese people may have never even seen a foreigner on TV. And to have foreigners that were not only doing comedy, not only on TV, but doing jokes, it really reached people. And Master Ding, very briefly after that, started working with Da Shan and a couple other foreigners on doing these shows that they toured around the country. And in all of these places, you know, Da Shan and the other foreigners that were doing Xiangsheng would have been the first like Western-looking person anyone had ever seen speaking Chinese anywhere. And they were funny. And so Master Ding kind of, I wouldn't say stumbled into it, because he was already a well-established comedian. He was a disciple of Hou Baolin, who is the biggest Chinese comedian of the last 100 years. And but he realized that there was this ability to bridge China and the rest of the world through Xiangsheng, which he loved so much. And that the Xiangsheng and the foreign Xiangsheng performers, even though from a linguistic perspective, they were not as good as the Chinese performers, but the audience had a reaction to them which was so real and powerful that, I mean, I think he felt the way that I felt about doing comedy in China, which is it just feels like it means so much. And China is a culture that back then, again, there were very few entertainment options. I mean, even now, there are cities of 5 million people in China where if you want to entertain yourself, there's like the movie theater, karaoke, and restaurants. And there's like, there's no axe throwing bars, there's no weird concept restaurants. Like, you know, it's like entertainment in a lot of parts of China, live entertainment, you know, you go to see Xiangsheng if you're going to go see a show. So I think it meant a lot back then for the foreigners to be doing Xiangsheng. And, you know, fast forward to 2012 when I arrived there, Master Ding was still taking foreign disciples. And there weren't many of us, but there were a couple of us that were still doing shows, still trying to, like, you know, be that kind of cultural bridge and outreach. And so Master Ding, I apprenticed to him, and if he told me we have a show on Thursday, we got a show on Thursday. If he's like, memorize the script, I memorize the script. If he's like, go to South Beijing and go to this random auntie's place and get measured for a robe, I go to South Beijing and get measured for a robe. So it was really you know, the whole book essentially is my experience of learning how to be a disciple and how to learn Chinese comedy, and then what I took out of Master Ding's teaching, I think even above and beyond comedy. if that makes any sense.
That makes sense. Where was Master Ding Beijinger, or where was he from?
He was an old Beijinger. So he actually his family ran a Xiaobing cart, selling Xiaobing, which are these like baked little cake snacks. And so they grew up very poor. And they would be selling Xiaobing on the street, and one of their customers was Great Master Ho, who lived nearby. And so they would sell him Xiaobing, and he just tried to get in with Great Master Ho since he was a kid, every day, being like telling jokes, yapping. And eventually, I guess he wore him down, is the kind of the impression I got. Eventually, Master Ho was like, okay, if you can do jokes, keep doing jokes, get better. And eventually he did get better and better and better, and he was a funny dude. But he was originally from Beijing, and
Was Master Ho also from Beijing?
Grandmaster Ho, I believe, was from Tianjin. I think he was, and Tianjin is really like the hardcore Xiangsheng fans are actually all in Tianjin. It's even bigger than Beijing.
Wow.
I performed there a couple times. I always felt very intimidated by performing in Tianjin because the Xiangsheng audience has heard every bit. Like, it's really hard to come up with something new they haven't heard. So you have to rely on your technique because they've heard it or something like it before. And they're like, all right, foreigner that wants to do comedy. Like,
Let's go.
yeah, you say you're Master Ding's disciple. We're going to take you seriously, put on a show. And it was always very intimidating.
Did you always do well in Tianjin?
I felt like I did as well as I did in Beijing, which I took to mean I did a great job because they were so sensitive. Now, I should be clear, like, I think a lot of that intimidation was in my head. The audience was nice. You know, we did a show once at the Tianjin Library, like the main city library. I think it was like 700 seat theater. And, you know, who are the type of people that show up to a random comedy show at the library? We had a lot of older people that really knew Xiangsheng. And so that's on one hand, a tough audience. On the other hand, what I really liked about the Xiangsheng audience was that because they had heard so much, they had great confidence in their taste, which meant that you could make, as a comedian, you could make big decisions and either be rewarded or fail, but there was a reward for it. Whereas I also spent a lot of time doing Chinese stand-up comedy, but the stand-up audience was not at all confident in their taste because they were all at their first ever stand-up show, basically.
Yeah.
So they would sit there and be like, I can't wait to see what this comedy is like. And I'm like, that's a bad vibe for a comedy show. I want you relaxed and like, you know, even that sort of like go, you know, make me laugh energy is kind of better than like, is this the funny? You know, because they didn't know what stand-up was. And so in the early days of stand-up comedy in Chinese is called 脱口秀, which translates directly to talk show. They would call it talk show. So stand-up comedy, but also like Oprah was all talk show. And so we would do early shows in the early days of the stand-up scene where the host would get up and he'd do a couple jokes and then he'd keep doing jokes and he'd keep doing jokes. And the audience is like, when is he bringing on the guest? Like, this host has just gone feral. Like, he's just taking up all the stage time and there's no guest on this talk show. And eventually people realize that there's like, there's branches of this. There's like jokes done through stand-up and then there's like interview shows and they're basically separate. But they didn't know that at the time. And so it was like the audience was always kind of very interested in figuring out what was going on. But yeah, it was a hell of a thing. So
You know, you played so many different audiences. Some of the funniest stuff in the book was like the stuff you did on cruise ships.
Yeah. What did you think was like funny in the book that maybe you weren't expecting?
Trying to make it to Fukuoka to make the ship, and with Master Ding's, you know, words ringing in your head to show up, and you know, that's one of the greatest stories.
It was nuts, and I have video of this because I was like, so one of the stories in the book that you can read if you buy a copy of my book. This was Funnier in China, which is being
totally recommend it.
Being published by Avid Reader Press and Simon & Schuster in February, and you can pre-order it right now. I also recorded an audiobook for it. But one of the stories was about my time performing on these Chinese cruise ships. And, you know, Master Ding, as my teacher, one of his big things that he was like, fundamentally, this is what it means to be a professional comedian, is you show up for the show. You might not kill every night. That's the way comedy works. Some nights you don't do a good job, but a professional shows up for the show. You can't be late. And especially on a cruise ship, if you miss the ship, it's over. Not only there's no show for the audience and they're going to be sitting there thinking, what the hell did we do? So I knew I had to get on this ship, but my flight to Japan, I was going to board the ship in Japan and then take the ship back to China. So I had to fly to Japan to get on the ship, but there was only one flight a day to the city where I was leaving from, and it was canceled. And so I was like, crap, what do? I need to make the boat by the next morning. And the only thing I could think to do was to take the earliest flight to anywhere in Japan and then take the high-speed rail all the way to the ship and then get from the high-speed rail to the port. And I did all this running. And I arrived there. I saw the ship, but it was a ghost town. It was just this 16-story ship at the port. And I literally walked up to this building and I pressed my hand to the side of it and it went and just started an inch at a time floating away. I was like, no, I missed the ship. And I was I thought I had an hour, but it turned out I had forgotten to factor in that I lost an hour going to Japan.
It's an hour difference between.
So I thought I would be able to make it, but in the end, I was not able to make it. And the moment I thought I had failed and I'm never going to perform on the cruise ships again and my agent is going to fire me and what a failure, even though I was it's not even my fault. But as I was worried
giving
about
yourself
this,
one day to get there, that is
hey, they book the flights. The cruise won't let you go early because if they let everybody take an extra day vacation every time there's a flight with thousands of employees, it would be a mess. So they are very strict of you have no choice of when and what flights you're going on. So I was I fucked up. It's over. And then, sorry, beeped. I beeped.
I'm gonna have to put an explicit warning on my.
Yeah. But and then out from behind the ship, this little vessel comes out, a little power boat, and it was the Japanese Coast Guard. And they start yelling at me in Japanese, and I'm I'm the comedian. I'm trying to oh my God. I probably had what is this motion?
Giving a blowjob.
I was I'm supposed to be on the ship. I'm the comedian. And they surely did not understand what I was trying to use whatever Japanese I knew. I was Chugoku Manzai, Chinese Manzai, which is their version of Xiangsheng. And I'm sure they had no idea what was going on, but they realized I was supposed to be on the ship. So they let me board the Coast Guard vessel, and we start chasing the ship out to sea. And we get up to speed as the ship is going out into the Pacific Ocean. And they open up a hatch 4 stories above where we were. And this guy yells down at me. He's like, who are you? And I'm I'm the comedian. And then he disappears for 30 seconds and he's what's your name and passport number? And so we did the whole check in there. And eventually they're he's supposed to be on the ship. And they threw down, I'm not joking, a rope ladder. They had a ladder with 2 sides and rope on in between. And they're climb on up. And so at speed.
You carrying a suitcase?
I brought a suitcase and a duffel bag, and I put the duffel bag around me and tightened it, and I put up the holder for the suitcase and put my arm through it so I could kind of wear the suitcase as a uneven backpack as I walked up 4 flights of rope ladder.
With the water down below? With the water
down below at speed, and I was this is insane. I remember going up thinking Royal Caribbean better never hear about this because I would be fired just for putting all this potential legal risk on them. Hopefully they don't read the book. But it was Master Ding was you make the show. And I had seen him be, this was a super nice guy who was a mentor of mine and really a father to me and the other Lawai that were studying comedy. One of the few times I ever saw him blow up angry was when somebody did not make the show.
Yeah, I remember that part in the book.
And it was like, I was like, this dude who was having trouble with the show wasn't his fault. He was on another TV show. It ran over. The director forced him to stay. And Master Ding was like, I just don't care. You said you were going to be here. Like, I can deal with people who are not funny and they get better. I can't deal with people who say they're going to show up and they don't. And I was like, and it's been a great lesson for me really in my whole life is like, like I'm always willing to go and like, if all I can give you is a 2 out of 10 today, I try to give you the 2 out of 10, but I don't like flaking. And so like, you can't like, you know, and in Hollywood, this has been a really good lesson as well. Like you'd be surprised how many people here are like, I will work with you even if your talent is lower than other people. If you show up on time and you respond to emails and you're a part of the project and you're respectful to everybody, like people think of celebrities getting special treatment and they do, but everybody would rather not be giving a celebrity special treatment. They would rather work with somebody who is maybe not quite as good, but just better to work with.
Well, you're going to be a celebrity now.
Yeah.
You know, even more than the Japanese cruise. My favorite story is Song Chi-yu.
Oh, the Song Chi-yu story. That's so funny.
When you the one where you were going to spend the New Year with him.
Yeah, so Chinese New Year. So why don't you maybe give a little introduction of like who was Song Chi-yu that you learned from the book and what made this the part?
Song Chi-yu was just like this guy who came from nothing, from a village in the middle of nowhere, and he was just a hustler. And you know, I've met people like Song Chi-yu, you know, over my 35-something years. And I've met people like him, and they're just, they will never surrender.
They never surrender.
So you spent time with him and trying to get there, even more than trying to make that vessel.
I got a
that
lot of
story.
making the show. Like, so I wanted to go to Chinese New Year for the countryside to visit this friend of mine, Song Chi-yu, who is a Chinese comedian, total hustler type. I actually learned a lot of why he was like the way he was by spending a couple days in his village and seeing kind of where he came from, this very, very poor village in Shanxi province in coal country. And he was like, do you want to come to visit for Chinese New Year? I said, yes. And then the problem was all of the tickets had already been bought. This was Chinese New Year, 700 million people on trains and buses and planes and everything. Every ticket gets bought up immediately. And the only way to get there, he's like, there's a bus that passes my hometown village. And so when you pass the village, get off the bus and I'll pick you up and we'll go. But what he didn't tell me is the bus doesn't like pass his village at like a bus stop. It literally on the highway passes his village. And so he's like, tell the driver to let you off on the side of the highway in the middle of the night.
Did he give you a marker or a name of the village?
So he was like, I'll be waiting for you around where the village is. And he kind of like gave a general idea. It's like between this town and that town. It wasn't even on Baidu Maps. It wasn't on Golda Maps. It wasn't on Google Maps. I couldn't find the village anywhere. It was too small. The whole village was 300 people. So and so I was like, this plan seems like a problem, but whatever. Like I'll give him a call or whatever. We'll figure it out. And like, and so I'm about at the right area. It's midnight. I've been on this bus for 10 hours. And finally I see headlights on the side of the road. And I tell the driver, I'm like, let me off. And everybody in the bus is like, oh, it's midnight. What's going on? And I just get off the bus drives away, and the headlights also drive away. It wasn't him. It was, I don't know who it was, but
you knew you were at the village.
I knew I was
proximity.
somewhere close, but I was like, I'm on the side of the highway now in rural Shanxi province at midnight.
And it must have been freezing cold.
It was so cold. Like my hands were, I was actually worried because my phone died and I wasn't sure whether it was because it had no battery or whether it just wouldn't work in this cold. And this was also, I think I had like an iPhone 4 at that point. Like it was in the past, man. So like the phones were not actually that good at that time of like surviving extreme temperature. And so eventually I managed to get my phone back on by taking out my laptop, plugging in the cord. Now I'm on the side of the road, unmarked in dark clothing, as
it's like 1 a.m. by
cars
now.
are whizzing by at 1 a.m. trying to ask, like, where are you? Where are you? He's like, I'm under the bridge. I'm like, which bridge? He's like, this bridge. And he sends me a picture of a bridge that could be any bridge on the highway. They all look the same. And so we're like, and the cars keep whizzing past, and I'm like, there's no way they're looking for this random lost American on the side of the road. And I was like, maybe this is how the story ends. Like, I was like, maybe like, but eventually they found me. And the funny part was he said, 我有车来接你. So he's like, I have a 车, which normally means car, but technically just means vehicle. And and I found out that he wasn't on a car. He was on his elementary school friend's motorcycle. And I knew it was his elementary school friend's motorcycle because his elementary school friend was also on the motorcycle. So we 3-person motorcycled it in the dark
with your suitcase,
with my suitcases, all the way back to the village, and again survived. So
yeah, when I was reading that, I said, oh my God, if I've been in some really desperate situations, but I mean, I remember thinking like some parts of it. I said, God, Jesse, he got through it. If that was me, I would have surrendered.
I mean, like, I definitely, like, in hindsight, I wonder whether I gained a lot of confidence from those early years in China and doing stuff to say, like, yeah, this place is crazy, but I'm trained for it. I'm ready for it. But all you need is, like, one time when it's too crazy, and then you could get seriously hurt or get, like, hypothermia.
That was a great story.
So,
I really take my hat off to you.
It all
in all my
out.
desperate situations in China. I don't think I ever faced that.
But no, it was a lot of fun, and it's and that village was fascinating. So these people, the whole village was.
I mean, where was it? Where was the closest city?
The closest city. They were actually not very far from Pingyao, which is like a tourist destination. Pingyao, which is actually worth going to if you have a chance, is like, it used to be a financial hub of the Qing dynasty. So relatively recently, 100, 150 years ago, like, big banks were there. And so they have these beautiful courtyard bank residencies of the whatever big, like, bank laoban that would have been running stuff, and enormous basements that used to be full of silver, and like a very cool thing. And they were only like 20 minutes away from Pingyao. But they were 20 minutes away from this relatively small place that used to be a hub 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So I was fascinated. Their dialect, they were 20 minutes away, but they didn't understand the Pingyao dialect. Their dialect was so different. I had a lot of trouble understanding these people in the village because their Mandarin was so crazy.
Not standard?
Not standard.
Didn't sound like Beijing?
No, it did not. And but like the village that he grew up in, they all grew up in these cave homes. So they have this big, what they call loess soil. It's this very rich, like river runoff over tens of thousands of years. The soil deposits get to be 30, 40 feet high. And in parts of China, they dig into the side of these like giant cliffs, essentially, of soil, and they build cave homes. And he grew up in a cave home with no running water, Yaodong, with no running water or electricity, and fought his way up to being in Beijing and running comedy shows. And so, like, for all the people from his village, this guy's a hero because he's like, people are giving him money to sit and listen to jokes. Like, they're like, we literally, all his village is all coal miners. They're like, what a gig to, like, do comedy and get paid for it, and
not die of black lung disease.
And I was like, it's always good to kind of keep the perspective solid. Like, are there trouble with Chinese comedy now and censorship? Yes. Do I have it as bad as I think of Song Qiyu and just how further he is and how much he's benefited from being able to do comedy and just, like, keeping the focus on, like, isn't it amazing that we can make people laugh and some people will give you money for it? It's incredible. Like, it's incredible. It's like,
is he still around? Is he still?
Yeah. So Song Qiyu, I actually, like a couple months ago, he messaged me saying he'd like to come to the U.S. to visit. And would I help write him a visa recommendation letter? So I wrote him a visa recommendation letter, and I found out later that he went with my letter and pictures of me and him and all the other people in the Chinese comedy scene to really show, like, I know Americans. I'm going to visit real Americans. And they wrote me this letter. And apparently the visa agent who worked at the American embassy was a fan of mine. And apparently this was like part of the reason why they gave this relatively poor guy with no property in China, the sort of person who normally does not get an American tourist visa. He got a tourist visa and he visited me here in LA. And I took him up to Griffith Park and, you know, showed him around. And
oh, wow. Next time he's in town, let me know.
So it was like this really cool moment of and you know where he wanted to go? The number one place he wanted to go.
Where?
Is this random parking lot in Monterey Park, because there's a Chinese influencer on Xiaohongshu, on Red Note, who's called Ding Pangzi, and Ding Pangzi has basically is running a channel about living in America as a homeless person. This guy was a essentially illegal immigrant to America who then got abused by his boss, like not paying wages. Illegal immigrants like don't get paid their wages. And he actually sued his boss, even as an illegal immigrant, won the court case. And part of the American law is that if you're an illegal immigrant, but you're abused by an American lawful employer, part of your compensation package is you get a green card. And so he has a green card, but still no job or money. So he was homeless in California legally as a legal resident, and started blogging about basically being a activist, for lack of a better term, for illegal workers in America, getting them, you know, better treatment, and scared the hell out of all these companies that were hiring illegal Chinese workers to do their paperwork right. And so he's actually done a lot of good work.
Yeah.
And so it was really funny. Like, this is one of my days when I realized that old Hollywood is over. That this guy from China who grew up watching Hollywood movies comes to LA, and the place he wants to go is a parking lot because of social media.
Far out.
So
we gotta cut to a commercial.
Yeah,
I gotta go.
All right. So we're gonna cut to a commercial. Laszlo's going to go to the bathroom right here. I'll take a couple questions from the audience. Questions, what are we talking about? What tea are we drinking? So we are drinking the 30-year aged white tea. Very, very beautiful, special occasion tea for discussing the book. And we are discussing my new book, This Was Funnier in China. Which is all about my time learning about Chinese comedy and doing Chinese comedy professionally, apprenticing to a master comedian, Master Ding Guangquan, who gave me this fan with his calligraphy on it when I apprenticed to him, and just telling stories with Laszlo Montgomery, who is the creator of the China History podcast and also the China Tea History podcast, I believe it's called. Or the China Tea Podcast, whatever it is. He has a great
Tea
podcast
History
series on tea.
Podcast.
What's the tea podcast name?
Tea History Podcast.
The Tea History Podcast, which you can search up. It is very much worth a listen. So questions over here. People are asking when the tea tables are going to be available on the website. Anything that is out of stock now, we have a Notify Me button on the page. So you can click the Notify Me button. I believe these specifically are supposed to arrive before the end of the month. But in general, we have multiple warehouses and multiple places. It's hard for me to know when stuff is coming back into stock, but if you click the Notify Me button and put in your email, you will get an email when it comes back in stock. So
you heard it from the owner of the company.
So we've been going about 15 minutes. I think we have a little bit more time left. I think maybe another 10, 15 minutes. So, what?
你决定。
我决定。您客气了啊，我给你多倒点茶。给你倒。So, basically, is there what else? Maybe I'll ask you a question about the book. What were you expecting when you heard, like, oh, Jesse wrote a book about Chinese comedy, and what did you get out of the book that was unexpected?
your bravery, courage, and your ability just to get through. There were so many things that I was able to relate to. That's like, oh, geez, I wouldn't have done this, or oh no, I wouldn't have even tried that. There was just something like, just that thing with Song Chi-yu on New Year's Eve. It's like, if that was me, it's like it would have been news in China. It's like foreigner found dead. He faced 7 challenges and failed on the first one. It's like everyone is like, oh, I would have given up. I would have
survived a lot of stuff.
So your perseverance.
I have this thing
creating in your comedy and in what you've done with tea. It's just been so impressive.
Thank you. No, it's one of these things where, I thought about this. I have this bad. I think it's both a good habit and a bad habit. But I really don't like giving up on stuff. I will continue to try to bash my way through problems that maybe I shouldn't try.
You got the Song Chi-yu, the Xiangsheng.
Yeah, Song Chi-yu Xiangsheng. And I think there's good and there's bad that comes out of that. I definitely think that, if COVID had never happened and I had never been forced to take a lot of time off of doing comedy touring, I never would have started the tea company. So I think partially what I've learned is like holding on too long, you're giving up other stuff that you may want to bring into the world. But I also think that, there's part of a reason maybe why the Tea House has succeeded is because a lot of people look in the early days of the channel and they're like, oh, I have 20 followers. Am I really going to spend all day making content for 20 followers or 100 followers or even 1,000 followers? Hey,
the Beatles used to play small rooms at the Cavern Club.
Well, and that was one of the things that I really learned from comedy that I had gone through this experience of doing a joke for 20 people in a bar and realizing if you get really good at it, the joke on the TV show that's aired to the whole country is the same joke you were doing for 20 people at a bar. It's like you think that the stage makes the work fundamentally different. But a lot of times it's the opposite. The hard part is how do you get that really funny joke that really worked for 20 people at a bar onto the TV show? Because,
what's funny in China that's not funny here? I mean, there's got to be 2 different kinds of...
There's definitely differences.
There's commonality, but what's...
I would separate comedy from media. So the media is very different because there's certain types of jokes you can and can't air there. And there's certain types of careers you can and can't have there that you could or couldn't have in the West. So if you only judge Chinese comedy by what TV shows there are and what movies that there are, I think you get the idea that the comedy is very different. But I think the comedy is not as different as that. If you go to live shows, people joke about what's funny in their life. I remember while I was on the side of the highway in Shanxi province, I had this thought thinking if I survive this, I'm gonna get some great bits. And that's, and that
impressed me.
But I think that's true in the West too. I don't think that there's such a difference between what Americans and Chinese think is funny that my horror story about trying to survive on the side of the highway at midnight and get to my friend's place for Chinese New Year, I'm like, this will work in both places. The jokes might be a little bit different and they might hit a little bit differently. But in that sense, I feel like we're all human. We can all relate to this story of trying to get to a place and disaster strikes. But then there's also stuff that I think in China is more funny than here. I feel like America, we have kind of a relatively flat social culture. You're a generation above me, but I can treat you like an equal. Whereas in China, if you're a generation above me, there's a certain sort of deference that I have to give. And playing with that deference and being he wouldn't know what he's talking about and that stuff, which here, it's a little rude. But in China, if I'm we have my tianbei, my older whatever, my uncle in the scheme of things, I owe a certain amount of respect to you that would just be pretty funny to block you out like that. And whereas it's kind of funny here, but it's more funny in China because they care more about that social interaction stuff. It's almost similarly there's a lot of Chinese comedy that talks about people interacting with their boss because there's very set social interactions about what you can and can't say to the boss. Whereas in America, you don't know what type of boss you have. Your boss might be cool with you saying that or not saying that. But in China, people are much more aware of like, oh, you can't say that to the boss or whatever. Or like, you know, so there's definitely stuff that's going to play differently. And then, you know, wherever life is similar, the jokes will be similar. Wherever life is different, the jokes will be different. And if life is very different, then the jokes will be very different. And if life is pretty similar, you might find out that it's like, hey, like, you know, there are some jokes about working at, say, a Chinese company that are not going to work in America, but I think everybody's worked at a company before and like gets some idea about how that's going to be. Mm-hmm. So like, I found that there was oftentimes like the kind of the limiting reagent or the most difficult factor. Hold on one moment. Sorry, they're testing whether I'm actually here or not. Oh, damn it. I need to slide this thing over. Great. One of the limiting factors is just like, in my mind, it was always a setup. Mm-hmm. It was like, can I set up to this audience, whether it's a Chinese audience, whether it's an expats living in China audience, whether it's an American audience of half Chinese Americans and half, you know, like non-Chinese speaking Americans, or even like a comedy club in Hollywood at 11 at night where there's 8 people there and there's 2 of them are on their phone and nobody has any idea about Chinese culture. Can I come up with the right setup for that audience that when I'm done with the setup, it leaves enough, you know, 情理之中，意想之外. 情理之中 means within understanding, 意想之外 means out of expectation. Can I set something up where people understand what I'm doing, but are still surprised when the reveal comes around? And so and in order to do a setup well as a comedian, you need to know what the audience knows and what they don't know. So in America, if I say like, you know, my family is middle class, my mom drove a Toyota Camry. That kind of like, that reference is an anchor for people, but my mom driving a Toyota Camry means very different things in China. Mm-hmm. Some of them might be somewhat similar, but they're going to be very different. So like in America, to tell people, oh, here's how I grew up, I might say what kind of car we drove, or, you know, went to a public high school, or whatever the situation is. But in China, you say went to a public high school that, you know, basically everybody went to a public high school. They don't have the social class separation in the same way that we do. Mm-hmm. So like, there's all of these little, I wouldn't call them landmines or lasers, because it's not like you're going to get fired or thrown into jail or whatever. People think, you talk about landmines in Chinese comedy, people literally think I'm going to get arrested. But as a comedian, in order to make the joke work, you need to know your audience well enough to set them up well, so that when I tell the funny story or have the reveal or the reversal that I feel, that I'm able to express that reversal in a way that they are not only understand, but are comfortable with and actually feel on an emotional level. Because if they understand it, but that's all, it's that you get like, but you don't get a laugh. Yeah. But if you find a way to talk about what happens in another country in a way that people really resonate with, now that's my crack. That's like what I like doing. Is
there something that you would say when you're on stage in America that you could say and it would get a laugh, but it's like, oh, you better never say this in China? I'm not talking political, I'm just talking about funny.
Yeah, let me think. The opposite one is easier to say. There's a lot of stuff you can say about race and culture in China that people take on face value, and here would be like, in China, I make jokes about being a white person, and if I want to, I can call the audience yellow people, which I would never do in America. But they're like, yes, you're white, we are yellow. They're like, there's no history of racial oppression or slavery there that would make people feel really awkward about that. Whereas here, we have all sorts of history about why everybody's sensitive on race. But I think things that like unexpected things, like I did a joke about like, oh, I have an American friend and he's dating a Chinese woman. For me, that's a setup. That like, you know, we know a lot of interracial couples, and that's not the unusual part, that's part of the setup. But there I figured that like, it wasn't that people wouldn't be comfortable with that, but I needed to show that there was some respect to the audience, that some people in the audience would feel uncomfortable with that. Not that I think that most people in China would be like, oh, like, you know, these foreigners coming over and dating Chinese women. But it's a very different thing if I said I knew a female foreigner that was dating a Chinese man. Completely different vibe in the audience with that being the setup versus a Western man with a Chinese woman. And so, like, it's not that you couldn't do the jokes, but in the same way that if you go on stage and you talk about race in America, you need to be respectful that it's a sensitive topic. There, as a white man or whatever, coming over and talking very kind of blithely about, like, yeah, Westerners come over here and they date all the Chinese women. Like, that's not a topic that they want treated super lightly. They're actually very interested, but you have to kind of show a little bit of respect to the fact that it could be considered sensitive to the audience there. And similar things were actually, like, if I wanted to talk about, you know, basic kind of like late night show joke setup. Hey, yesterday I saw an article in the New York Times that they said blah, 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 blah. Now, if I just say the news, that's not specific enough because they want to know whether it's a Western news source or a Chinese news source. I can't just say I saw the news because they don't know what news I'm watching. And they automatically assume that if it's the Western news about China, it will be wrong. And if I don't accept that as reality, there's tension in the audience.
Yeah.
Now, I could also go say, like, hey, yesterday I saw something in the New York Times, and I know what you're thinking. They're probably wrong about China. And then like, if I just address the fact that some people might think it's wrong, now I might be able to bring it back in and say, but I think you would agree with what they said, which was blah, 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 blah. That seems reasonable, right? Or I could see it in the New York Times, but just lie and say I saw it in the China Daily, and now all of a sudden people trust it.
Yeah.
So it's like there were weird things with like information and trust that I think were a little bit different. That I had to be sensitive about it. It's not that I couldn't do the joke, but I definitely had to be aware of letting people know. Or the best one I found, if I wanted to talk about just like I saw this in society. If I said I saw it on my 朋友圈, like the circles, the WeChat circles, which is kind of like the WeChat's version of like a social media feed, everybody had the highest trust for WeChat circles, WeChat moments, which I always thought was interesting because that's like in some way the least regulated because it's just a timeline feed. It shows you all everybody you're friends with, everything they share, in a timeline feed with no editing. And weirdly enough, that's the most trust we can get now out of the media is like no triage of important or unimportant. The fact that it all shows up means it's the least censored news we get, which is kind of interesting to think about. And I think it's also one of the reasons why people trust email a little bit more than other types of things because Gmail was invented at a time, and email was invented at a time where you just showed everything the moment it showed up. And tech companies hadn't realized that the real money was in manipulating what people see and don't see. But nowadays, if you had an email service that only showed you like the ones that Google wants to show you, nobody would use that service. We got used to living in a better internet before the internet became shitified in the way it is now. So weirdly enough, I think that might come back. Like, I think we might see more dumb channels as a way of avoiding political spin. It's just like the moment the article is posted, you get to see it. So that we might see more stuff like that. So
we'll see.
We'll see.
You got a one-man show coming up, don't you?
So
tell me about it.
Last thing before we wrap up.
Is it going to be in China or U.S.?
So I'm going to tour the U.S. I'm going to be doing shows in L.A. I have University of Richmond booked on February 6th. I have
coming right up.
I'm going to be doing the National Chinese. There's called a National U.S.-China Education Trust in Washington, D.C., which is an NGO that's going to be hosting the show. I'm going to be performing at the Asia Society in New York City on the Upper East Side on February 12th. I'm going to be performing probably at Brandeis University or my high school, Newton North High School, one of them or maybe both, in the sometime between the 15th and the 18th of February. and then maybe also doing some more events, maybe San Francisco, maybe Austin, maybe Chicago. I'm going to have a bunch of information about the tour that's going to be available if you're on the Jesse's Tea House email list or if you follow these accounts. And but regardless of that, everybody can pre-order the book. This was Funnier in China, which is available if you just Google search. It's available on Amazon. You can also buy it directly from Simon & Schuster's website, or go to your local bookstore and tell them you want This is Funnier in China, and you'll put down a pre-order and help us get into more small bookstores, which is what I'd really like.
Are you in any airports?
No, I got to get in on that airport game.
Yeah.
Who do you call to get in the airports? Because I think
call
we,
the FAA.
I mean, I think we do good in airports. Like, I think a giant yellow covered book
this
about.
would be great. This would be a great airplane read.
I figure out where are the terminals that we have people flying to China.
LAX, SFO, SCA.
Yeah, so like we got to get on it. But in any case, thank you so much for coming over and helping to share the word. And thank you for reading the book and giving us a blurb.
Yeah, that was great.
And so it's it's always great if people don't know about the China History Podcast or the Tea History Podcast. Go check it out.
Please do.
And then any last word you want to share about the book, or what do you think?
Just want to say it was just a fun read. It was a way to get to know you better. And wow, your picture should be in the dictionary next to the word perseverance.
I appreciate that. Thank you. So we're going to call it here. Let's end the podcast now. And then I know if anybody has been watching and been annoyed we're not answering questions, you want to do like 10 minutes of Q&A? If we have like
is this
five
live right
minutes.
here?
Yeah, we're live right here.
Oh,
So
gee, I've never been on a live stream.
So we can press pause on the actual podcast. We're done.
Okay, goodbye.